Hello, my name's Claire Whitman, and if you've ever been the invisible one at your own family table, you'll understand this. 2 summers ago, I showed up to a family BBQ only to be called useless by the people who raised me. I stayed quiet then, but what they didn't know was that one day, they'd need my signature to move forward, and I'd be the one deciding. I almost didn't go. I knew what would happen, and I was right. The email came on a Wednesday morning like a casual formality. No call, no warmth, just a subject line that read, Family BBQ, Saturday at 4 p.m. Don't be late. Dress appropriately. A single line at the bottom, probably copied and pasted, said, We'll be celebrating Lana's new position at Addington. Make sure to congratulate her. No signature. Just Mom. For a full 5 minutes, I stared at the screen. I could have ignored it. I had every reason to. The last time I attended one of these gatherings, Lana laughed so hard she spilled wine on her heels when she saw the jacket I was wearing. She told the entire patio I was cosplaying Goodwill chic. And nobody defended me. And yet I pressed accept on the calendar invite. I told myself it was to be polite, to show I still cared even if they didn't. But deep down, I think I needed them to see me. To remind them I still existed even if they'd spent years pretending otherwise. Saturday came wrapped in southern heat and soft breezes, the kind that carried the smell of cut grass and charcoal. I drove alone, windows down, rehearsing ways to disappear into the background. The Bennett house hadn't changed, same white shutters, same stone pathway, lined with blooming hydrangeas. Only now I felt like an intruder returning to a home that had quietly evicted me. Voices and laughter spilled from the backyard. I paused before stepping through the gate, brushing invisible lint from my navy blouse. It wasn't new, but it was clean and pressed. Simple gold studs, hair tied neatly flats, not heels. I didn't come to impress them. I came because I deserved to be there no matter what they believed. The yard looked like something from a catalog, fairy lights strung between trees, picnic tables dressed with gingham tablecloths, and a grill already sizzling. Lana was center stage, surrounded by admirers as she waved her glass mid-story. She beat out 4 senior candidates, Mom announced proudly. Addington doesn't just hand out corporate partnerships. You have to be special. Lana's always had that spark, Dad added, beaming. She's a star, someone chimed in. Unlike most of us still circling mediocrity. The words weren't subtle. They never were. I stood by the lemonade pitcher, invisible, until Dad caught sight of me. He squinted, then offered a thin nod before turning back to the group. It's a wonder anyone has ever hired you, Claire, he said, not even trying to whisper. Still working those temp jobs? A few chuckles followed. I didn't flinch. Instead, I poured myself a drink and took a slow sip, letting the silence speak for me. Lana caught sight of me, then her smile stretching just enough to be dangerous. She walked over, tan legs, perfect blowout confidence like perfume. Claire, she said, as if testing whether my name still fit. Glad you could make it. We were just talking about performance metrics. Do you even know what OKRs are? Before I could answer, Haley appeared silent, always slightly detached from the chaos. She offered a half smile, a private one meant just for me. Her eyes lingered longer than necessary, as if trying to apologize for a family neither of us had chosen. I gave her the smallest nod. It was enough. The rest of the afternoon blurred into the same tired pattern, Lana the golden child, Claire the afterthought. I drifted toward the kitchen, pretending to check on something, anything to get away from the clanging noise of their congratulations. The sliding glass door clicked shut behind me. Blessed silence. Inside, the air was cooler, the countertops lined with platters of unserved food. I leaned against the sink, letting the calm settle over my shoulders. But then voices from the hallway. Lana's unmistakably crisp. Tessa Moreland from Elridge is still waiting on that partner approval, she said, laughter in her voice. If I can land that, the Addington board's going to eat it up. Someone, maybe Cousin Derek, asked something I couldn't hear. Lana replied, flippant. No idea who approves those. It's always buried in compliance somewhere. I just need that signature. Then it's done. Tessa Moreland. That name. I hadn't heard it in weeks, but there it was spoken, like it belonged to just another notch on Lana's ladder. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. She didn't know. Of course she didn't. That was the point. I watched the condensation slide down my lemonade glass and smiled just a little. Funny. They don't know who signs that approval. Funny how my resume never mattered until they realized someone else needed it. The hallway light flickered as I stepped into my apartment, a flicker that echoed the way my thoughts ricocheted inside my head. The door clicked shut behind me with a softness I'd come to prefer. Silence didn't judge. It didn't compare. It didn't smirk or lean over a barbecue grill to mock your existence. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and kicked off my flats. My apartment wasn't large, just 2 rooms and a balcony barely wide enough for a folding chair. But it was mine. No fingerprints but my own. No trophies on display. No family photos. No echoes of applause for someone else. The living room window let in the amber glow of the street lamp. I didn't bother turning on the overhead light. Just the soft yellow from the kitchen enough to find my way. I sank onto the couch, the cushion sighing beneath me, and stared at nothing for a long while. I wasn't angry. That would have been too easy. What I felt was harder to name something like a knot that had been pulled too tight for too long, fraying at the center. My family never said I wasn't good enough. They didn't have to. They just let the silence speak for them year after year. The phone buzzed against the table. Graham Reynolds, Elridge Legal. I hesitated, then picked up. Claire, his voice came warm but businesslike. Hope I didn't catch you at a bad time. Not at all, I said, sitting straighter, voice smoothing itself automatically. You're calling about the Addington file exactly. Lana Bennett, her application hit our desk this morning. Just a courtesy heads up, the Ethics Review Committee needs to finalize within 72 hours. Standard timeline. I paused, the irony prickling like static in my chest. Right. And I'm still the assigned reviewer for external partnerships. You are. And before you ask, yes, your sister listed you as a professional reference. I almost laughed. Graham chuckled lightly. Apparently she assumed you'd be flagged only internally, not that you were lead reviewer. She's not wrong. That's what most people assume. He paused, sensing the edge beneath my words. Want me to reassign it? No, I said too quickly. Then gentler. No, I'll handle it. I'll be professional. I never doubted that. He clicked off after some polite wrap-up, but the quiet that followed was louder than before. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled out the old notebook with the faded spine. Inside the first page still held the quote I wrote when I was 17. One day I'll own my silence. It was the night after I turned down the Columbia scholarship. A full ride. A miracle, really. I remember sitting at the dinner table, hands in my lap, while my parents explained how selfish it would be to move so far away. Your mother has health concerns, my father said. We need someone close by. You can study business at UNC. Still respectable. And local, my mother added. So you won't forget your roots. I remembered the way their words felt like a weight pressing on my shoulders, soft but inescapable. I nodded back then like a good daughter, like someone who knew her place. I turned to the next page, blank. Just space. Empty and full at once. I walked to my desk and powered up the laptop. My work login greeted me with bland efficiency. Elridge Ethics Review. Active files. There she was. Lana Bennett. Candidate for Addington Corporate Partnerships. Below her name was the Digital Packet Performance Review's internal memos, formal accolades. And the photo. One of those stylized professional headshots. She wore a navy sheath dress, arms crossed, smile sharp enough to cut glass. Next to it, a scan of a press feature from last fall. Addington Rising Stars, complete with a quote. I believe integrity is about showing up no matter who's watching. I stared at it, jaw tight. The kind of thing she would say at the dinner table and mean none of it. Lana, who once took my binder of volunteer hours in high school and copied it into her own application. Lana, who never apologized when she stole my essay draft and repackaged it for a scholarship of her own, and below that, tucked into the personal milestones section, an image from her engagement party. Champagne flutes, white florals, and a circle of people clapping around her. I wasn't in the picture. I hadn't even been invited. I let the screen glow in the darkness washing over my face. Then I reached for the digital pen and wrote the word pending across her status. Pending. Just like I had been for the last decade, waiting, watching, never needing to speak. Not until now. Let's see how badly you need my signature now, little sister. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing them who I was. The elevator chimed softly as I stepped onto the 20th floor. The Monday morning buzz had begun, footsteps on marble coffee cups in hand, greetings exchanged with the kind of efficiency that only corporate culture could breed. I passed by the glass-walled conference rooms and paused at the frosted door that bore the modest plaque, Claire Bennett, Ethics and Compliance. It still made people blink. The name, as if the title didn't belong with it. Inside my office was as I'd left it, neat, unassuming, a space designed to not invite questions. My chair gave a soft creak as I sat down and powered up the system. The Elridge platform came to life, bringing with it a tidy line of new reviews, pending approvals and internal notes. But my eyes went straight to the highlighted one, Lana Bennett, partner applicant, Addington Corporation. I clicked it open. The screen divided into segments: background check, internal memos, past employment, education history. Polished, airbrushed, typical. But something tugged at me. "Graham," I said as soon as he picked up. "Can you pull Lana's archived records from the 2012 internship cycle, including university references?" He paused, probably mid-coffee. "That's more than a decade ago." "I know. I want to double-check something." "Everything okay? Just a procedural sweep?" I said lightly. "Due diligence." "Sure. I'll get you what we have." I ended the call, leaned back, and looked out the window. The skyline of Greensboro stretched far, but never felt as distant as the space between who I'd become and who they thought I was. My phone vibrated. Tessa Moreland, Addington Legal. I took a breath and answered. Claire Bennett. "Hi, Claire. Thanks for taking my call. We're processing Lana's onboarding and just need confirmation on her ethical standing standard box checking." "Understood," I replied. "Is this based on internal flags or client-facing obligations?" "Mostly internal. We had an inquiry years ago involving an academic matter, but it didn't escalate. Still, with the new standards post-reorg, we're re-verifying. You know how it is. Academic matter. I'll follow up formally," I said, already opening the Education Verification tab. "Anything else?" "That's all for now. Thank you." The call ended, but something had already shifted. I searched deeper. Cross-referenced institutions, and there it was, nested within a memo from an old internship reference check flagged for potential academic misconduct at the undergrad level. No formal charge, no consequences, but noted. Of course it had been. Lana always knew how to glide just above the fallout line. A soft ding. New message. "Haley, I also lost something because of Lana. You're not the only one, Claire." My fingers hovered over the keys. I didn't know what hurt more, the past being confirmed, or realizing I'd let it pass like background noise for so long. Haley had always been the quiet one, kept her head down. We were cousins, but barely close. And yet, she'd seen me, heard what others dismissed. I messaged back, "Claire, what happened?" She replied instantly. "Haley, senior year, group scholarship. Lana changed the credits on my part of the proposal. Said it was a mistake. I didn't get the award." The memory sharpened like glass underfoot. How many times had Lana rewritten the truth for her own benefit, and we all just accepted it? I turned back to the screen. The cursor blinked at me, steady and patient. I didn't owe anyone revenge, but I did owe the truth. I clicked the top right corner of the dashboard. Pause review. Reason further verification required. The system flagged the application. Not a rejection, not even a delay. Just a pause, a breath before the verdict. I stood up and walked to the window. The city moved below traffic lights, blinking pedestrians, pacing people going on with their lives, while I stood here breaking a silence I'd worn for too long. This wasn't about old wounds. It was about what I chose to carry forward. I picked up my phone again. "Claire, thanks for telling me. You didn't deserve that. Haley, neither did you. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing them who I was. But not anymore. They won't see this coming. I didn't either until now. They taught me I had nothing. So I built something they couldn't see." The apartment was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. I sat at my dining table lights, dimmed fingers brushing over the yellowed edge of a folded envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, elegant cursive, always slanted slightly to the right. For Claire, when you're ready. It had been tucked in the back of my filing cabinet for years. I wasn't sure what made tonight feel like the night. Maybe it was the inbox message from Lana titled, "Need your help. Urgent." Or maybe it was the phone call from Mom that hadn't stopped replaying in my head. I unfolded the letter carefully. The paper crackled with age, but the ink held strong. Claire, if you're reading this, you've probably learned what I already knew. The world doesn't always reward kindness, but it always notices strength. Real wealth isn't visible, but it protects. It gives you space to move without noise. Let them underestimate you, darling. That's the power they gave away. I closed my eyes, letting her voice echo inside me. Grandma wasn't wealthy in the flashy sense, but she had built something real. Her modest estate, her rental properties, even the library endowment she'd never told the family about. She'd left me the knowledge and the choice to use it. My phone rang. Mom. I didn't answer immediately, just stared at the name until the third ring, then slid my thumb across the screen. Claire, Mom began without preamble, her voice lower than usual. Your sister's been waiting on that form. I said nothing. She's under so much pressure. This job means everything to her. And the review is, well, it's time sensitive. Still, I waited. Claire, she prompted. I'm here. A beat of silence. Then, you're not going to hold old grudges, are you? I know things weren't always even between you girls, but that was years ago. Even. That word hit harder than it should have. You remember when Grandma passed, I said, voice calm. You had the will adjusted, so the lake house transferred directly to Lana. She was more available to maintain it. She was 19. I did what I thought was right. Mom snapped, her tone suddenly brittle. You were always so distant, Claire. Hard to read. I needed someone dependable. You needed someone obedient? I didn't say it aloud. She's not taking this well, Mom continued. Please just sign the damn paper. Your sisters. Thanks for calling, I said, and hung up before she could say more. I set the phone face down on the table. The silence returned thicker now. Back on my laptop, Graham had forwarded the final deadline from Elridge. Tessa needed confirmation or decline by end of day tomorrow. Technically, I still had the option to approve with caveats, but I'd already opened a new document titled Statement of Ethical Ineligibility, Lana Bennett. I'd written 3 drafts, every line factual, every citation justified. I clicked save, but didn't send. Not yet. Instead, I walked across the room to the tall cabinet against the wall. Inside, behind the rows of old books and notebooks from graduate school, was a small steel safe. I spun the dial left, right, left until it clicked open. Inside was nothing extravagant, my passport, a few financial documents, and an old black leather case. I lifted it out gently. Inside lay a single object, a silver fountain pen with a fine tip and a carved EB near the clasp. Grandma's initials. She'd used it to sign every lease she ever wrote, every donation, every scholarship check. I placed the pen beside the printed copy of Lana's pending denial. The message was clear, even in silence. They thought I had nothing because I didn't wave credentials in their faces or carry a resume stapled to my pride. But they were wrong. I'd built something quiet, precise, resilient. And now, it was time to use it. You don't get to decide whose signature matters. Not anymore. Funny thing about signatures, they mean nothing until they're the one thing you can't get. The conference room at Elridge's Greensboro branch was designed to look neutral, white walls, frosted glass, polished wood. But neutrality had limits, especially when your entire family sat across from you, not knowing why they were there. I had arranged the meeting under the guise of a final clarification for the ethics review. Tessa had agreed to join via Zoom from Addington HQ. Graham sat to my left as company counsel. To my right, Lana, her face carefully composed, though the tension in her jaw betrayed her. Beside her were my parents, stiff-backed and visibly impatient. Ron's cufflinks gleamed. Denise clutched her handbag like it might offer protection. No one spoke when I walked in. I took my seat and folded my hands. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice level. I'll keep this brief. We're here to conclude the ethical review for the Addington Partnership file. Tessa's voice came through the speaker. Good morning, everyone. As a reminder, Elridge requires a formal signature from the compliance lead Claire for final clearance. Without it, the file cannot proceed. Ron frowned. Why are we all here for that? Couldn't you just sign it, Claire? Save everyone some trouble? I could, I said evenly. But I wanted full transparency. I clicked the remote, projecting the review policy onto the screen behind me. Clause 7.2, Final Ethical Sign-Off. Sole discretion of assigned officer. No override permitted. No appeal. This clause, I continued, was implemented 3 years ago following a conflict of interest scandal. It's designed to insulate ethics from favoritism. Lana turned toward me. Claire, please, I didn't know you'd be assigned. If I did, I would have said something. You did say something, I replied. You listed me as a reference without confirming I was on the compliance board. That's not just careless, it's unethical. Her eyes widened. I didn't mean I raised a hand. This isn't about meaning, it's about trust. Denise leaned forward, voice trembling. Sweetheart, I'm sure your sister made a mistake. She's under a lot of pressure. This opportunity is everything to her. Ron's tone cut sharper. What exactly are you trying to prove here, Claire? That you can hold power over your sister? That you finally have something we need? I didn't blink. I'm doing my job. Lana's hands gripped the edge of the table. You want me to beg? Is that what this is? I was stupid. I know that. But you can't really mean to block this over something that happened years ago. I glanced down at the folder in front of me. The document inside was crisp, stamped, signed. Years ago, I said slowly, I asked Dad to co-sign the application for my first bank account. He refused. Said I didn't need financial independence. I'd have a husband for that one day. Silence. Ron stiffened. That's not what I said. No, I agreed. You said I'd just waste it. I slid the document from the folder and placed it on the table. This is the formal denial of ethical clearance for candidate Lana Bennett, citing unresolved academic misconduct and misrepresentation in her reference listing. Lana gasped, pushing back in her chair. You've already signed it, she whispered. I nodded. Yesterday. Denise's face collapsed. You can't do this. She'll lose everything. She still has everything I said. What she doesn't have is a shortcut through me. Graham remained silent, arms crossed. Tessa's voice came through again, distant but resolute. Thank you, Claire. We'll proceed accordingly. I stood slowly. This wasn't revenge, I said, looking each of them in the eye. It was accountability. Lana shook her head in disbelief. You called me useless. Now you can't move an inch without my permission. They thought I came to punish them. But I brought something far worse a choice. I sat at the far end of the conference table, hands folded, gaze level. Across from me sat Lana, her chin lifted high, but her fingers curled tight around the arms of her chair. Ron paced behind her, the soles of his shoes snapping against the hardwood. Denise sat stiffly, clutching her handbag like it might protect her from the weight of what was coming. Only Graham remained composed, observing in silence from the corner. They expected an execution, a verdict. But I'd come to offer something more unsettling, a mirror. Before we move forward, I said calmly, I want to make something clear. This isn't about vengeance, not for me. Denise's voice trembled. Then what is it about Claire? You humiliated your sister yesterday? That statement you submitted. Tessa said it's under legal review. It is. I confirmed. She could lose the offer. She might, I agreed. Or she might not. Lana finally spoke. Her voice, so often used to outshine mine, was now quieter than I'd ever heard it. So, what happens now? I leaned forward. Now I give you a choice. I slid a blank sheet of Elridge letterhead across the table along with a pen. You'll write a statement, a personal ethics declaration, a commitment to transparency, responsibility, and acknowledgement of past misconduct, in your own words, handwritten, no edits, no PR polish. Lana blinked. You want me to? Confess. I want you to reflect, I said. And I want a reason beyond a polished resume for why you deserve this position. Ron slammed his palm on the table. You're out of line. This isn't some tribunal. This is your sister. I turned toward him slowly. You're right. It isn't. It's corporate ethics protocol. One you insisted I'd never be part of. Now I enforce it. She's not perfect, Claire Denise cut in. But she's trying. Haven't you ever made a mistake? I smiled just faintly. Plenty. I just didn't write other people's names on them. Silence. Lana stared at the page. I could see it in her, the desire to protest, to storm out, to refuse. But something heavier held her there. A sliver of recognition, maybe. A glimpse of consequence. She picked up the pen. The scratch of ink on paper filled the room. Her handwriting, elegant but shaky, moved across the lines, slowly. She didn't look up. Didn't ask what to write. Just wrote. Ron sat down at last, arms crossed tight. Denise looked everywhere but at me. When Lana finished, she held the paper between her fingers, knuckles white. I reached across and took it, read it. The words were neat, safe, measured. She acknowledged the oversight in her academic record, apologized for misrepresentation, promised to uphold Elridge's values. It sounded good. Too good. I folded the paper once, twice, then tore it cleanly in half. The silence shattered. Lana gasped. What are you doing? Ron shot to his feet. That was her statement. No, I said quietly, placing the torn halves on the table. That was a performance. Denise's mouth opened, but I didn't give her the chance. Integrity written under pressure isn't integrity. You taught me that. All of you. Funny how people want to reconnect after you show them you're no longer desperate. I arrived at Trattoria Fiore at exactly 12:30, not a minute early. Denise had picked the restaurant, white tablecloths, vintage wine racks, waiters who didn't speak unless summoned. The kind of place she took clients to feel important. She'd reserved a corner table with filtered sunlight spilling through beveled glass. I spotted her the moment I walked in, already seated, already smiling, as though we were lifelong confidants meeting for lunch. Not mother and daughter unraveling decades of quiet damage. Claire, she stood halfway to greet me with a perfumed hug, air kissing my cheek. You look lovely. That blazer is so tailored. Thank you, I said, taking my seat. I wore the same blazer I'd had for 4 years. She was only noticing it now. The server came and went. Denise ordered a lemon spritz and kale salad with grilled salmon. I asked for water and the day's special. She blinked. Well, she said once we were alone, isn't this nice? Just the two of us? No noise. I didn't respond. I let the quiet do what it always did with us, expose the gaps. I've been thinking, she continued, stirring her drink absently, about how silly it is for families to hold grudges, especially sisters. You and Lana should be supporting each other, not all this drama. Drama. She always used that word when something emotional became inconvenient. I didn't create the situation, I said calmly. I know, she waved it off. But what matters now is moving forward. As a family. The salads arrived. She picked at hers like it had wronged her. You know, she said after a pause, I never realized how capable you are until recently. I mean, you've built quite a position for yourself at Elridge. That's not nothing. I raised an eyebrow. Thank you. I suppose my resume became interesting once it blocked someone else's path. Her smile faltered. That's not fair, Claire. I'm trying to say I'm proud of you. No, I said, voice low but steady. You're trying to say the right thing. That's different. She set down her fork. Claire? I looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. When I was 15, I said I asked you to sign the form for that weekend investment seminar. Do you remember a slight twitch in her brow? Vaguely. You said no. Because Lana had a music competition that weekend and you couldn't be in 2 places at once. You told me to be practical. Well, wasn't I right maybe? But practicality has a cost. You always assumed I would just manage. You did manage. Yes, I nodded. But not because you made it easier. She exhaled slowly, tone softening. I didn't understand you back then. You were so quiet. Always reading, always off in your head. I never knew what you were feeling. That's the thing, I said, leaning forward. I don't need you to understand me. I just need you to stop hurting me. She froze. I never meant, I know. But it doesn't make it better. The waiter returned to clear our plates. We both declined dessert. Denise took a slow sip of her drink, then finally asked what she'd been circling. So, Are you going to sign the clearance? I folded my napkin and placed it neatly on the table. You still don't get it, I said. This was never about the signature. She didn't want me at her wedding, but she wants me at her interview. The cappuccino in front of me had already cooled untouched. I stirred it absently, watching the foam swirl before settling again. The cafe was quiet, muted jazz humming in the background, soft clinking of spoons and cups. A place for hushed conversations and second thoughts. Haley slid into the seat across from me, her scarf slipping slightly from one shoulder. She looked the same as ever, calm, composed, but with that wary alertness only people raised in a family like ours developed early. Sorry I'm late, she said, unwrapping her gloves. I took the long route, needed the air. I nodded, grateful for her presence. Thanks for coming. She smiled faintly, pulling her drink towards her. After yesterday, I wouldn't miss it. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping, listening to the rain start to whisper against the windows. She emailed me, Haley said eventually, about the review. Lana, I mean. I looked at her, said she was worried, asked if I could speak to someone at Elridge, said I owed her. Haley's tone turned bitter. You believe that? Unfortunately, yes, I murmured. She hasn't changed, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. Still thinks people are stepping stones. Back in school, she convinced me to drop out of the regional debate finals. I blinked. You told me you were sick that week. I wasn't, Haley said. She told me I'd embarrass the team if I stayed, said I couldn't think on my feet. Then she went on to win the state slot. With my research. I gripped the edge of my cup a little tighter. That was the first time, she continued, but not the last. It's a pattern. Lana doesn't just compete. She removes obstacles. I nodded slowly. I used to think it was just me, that I'd imagined the slights, the way she rewrote memories. Haley looked at me steady. She isolates people, makes them question themselves. You're not imagining it. She made it her mission to shine at whatever cost. The rain picked up, turning steady now. A few people rose from nearby tables, pulling coats tighter, heading back into the gray. I stared into my coffee. She didn't invite me to her wedding. Posted pictures everywhere. Wrote family means everything under one of them. Haley's jaw tightened. I remember. I messaged you that day, but you never replied. I didn't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. Just act. I looked at her. Her eyes were tired, but resolute. No one else can stop her, she said. But you can. My phone buzzed softly in my bag. I pulled it out, heart tightening as I opened the email. Lana, can we talk privately? I think we misunderstood each other. I closed it without replying. Instead, I opened a new message. To Tessa Moreland. Subject, candidate integrity concern. I have a concern about candidate integrity. Please let me know a good time for us to talk. I hit send. Seconds later, a reply appeared. Tessa, I was hoping you'd say that. Let's talk tomorrow. It wasn't revenge. It was an assessment with consequences. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was nervous. I wasn't, not exactly. It was something colder, sharper. Like the edge of something I had carried for years was finally cutting through the fog. By morning, I had reviewed the files 3 times, checking every detail again. My desk looked like a war room printouts, annotations, case policy documents from Elridge's ethics board, and a thumb drive labeled in neat handwriting L. Whitmore, review material. At 8:52, Graham knocked softly and entered without waiting. Morning, he said, setting a coffee down on my desk. Extra shot just in case. I gave him a grateful look. You think we'll need it? He sank into the chair opposite mine. We're not the ones under review. I exhaled through a smile, though it didn't reach far. By 9:30, the only sound in the room was the soft hum of my computer. At 9:59, the Zoom link activated, and a moment later, 3 frames came into view. I squared my shoulders, clicked join. Tessa Moreland Addington's Regional VP of Talent and Development appeared exactly on the hour. She looked as poised and unreadable as ever. Buttoned blouse, subtle pearl studs, clipboard in view, just off screen. Good morning, Claire, she said evenly. Mr. Beckett, thanks for meeting with us, Graham said with his usual composure. Let's get to it, she said, folding her hands under her chin. What have you found? I shared my screen. First document, a PDF scan of an official university letterhead dated May 2015, stamped confidential. The University of North Carolina conducted an internal review, I began. This is the outcome of a plagiarism allegation involving Lana Whitmore's senior thesis. It was quietly resolved. She graduated, but the incident was recorded and archived. Tessa didn't blink. She simply said, "Continue." I clicked to the next page. A statement from a former colleague at Braddock and Lane with a notarized signature. According to this report, I explained Ms. Whitmore was accused of taking sole credit for a client strategy that had been prepared by her junior associate. The team lead declined to escalate it officially, but it resulted in her being promoted ahead of others. Tessa leaned forward slightly. Graham spoke next, calm and unhurried. As per Elridge Group policy, our ethical endorsement cannot be extended in cases where there is substantiated misconduct, academic or professional. This standard is non-negotiable. Tessa remained silent for a long moment, eyes scanning the screen. The tension in the room coiled like a spring taut and waiting to snap. Then she spoke. "Your findings match what our background team surfaced. We were hesitant to act without corroboration, but now..." She let the sentence finish itself. I nodded once. "This wasn't easy," I admitted. "I know what it looks like." "You mean that it's personal?" Her voice was sharper now, but not accusatory. "Yes, I kept my gaze steady. But I have a responsibility. And no matter who the candidate is, even if she's my sister, I can't certify something I know to be false." Tessa's expression shifted just slightly. "I understand, and I appreciate the distinction. Most people wouldn't be able to draw that line." She turned to Graham. "From your end," Graham replied, "we've documented every step from initial flag to today's review. If you need a formal letter of findings, we'll prepare one." Tessa exhaled. "That won't be necessary. We'll proceed with our second finalist. Thank you both for your diligence." The call ended with a click. The screen went black. I sat back, hands folded in my lap. Graham watched me for a beat before speaking. "You did what no one else would. I did what anyone should," I said softly. "But you are the only one who actually did it." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The room felt strangely hollow, as though a door had quietly shut between two parts of my life. One where I spent years shrinking, and another where I finally stood at full height. I reached for my coffee, now cold. Took a sip anyway. And then my phone rang. Lana calling. "You don't have to raise your voice when the truth is already standing." The living room looked the same. Same oversized leather sofa Ron refused to replace, same collection of family portraits with Lana front and center, and same feeling that I didn't belong, only this time I didn't flinch when I felt it. They had called for a family meeting like we were some tightly knit clan recovering from a bad week. It was laughable, really. I sat in the armchair, arms folded, letting the silence linger. Ron broke it first. "Your sister worked her whole life to get to this point. She was one step away. One step. And you?" He shook his head. "You slammed the door in her face." Haley sat near the end of the couch, eyes downcast but flicking up every now and then to gauge my reaction. Denise was beside her, blotting her eyes with a tissue, theatrical as always. "You didn't have to go that far, Claire," she said, voice wobbling. "You could have spoken to us, to her. We could have handled this privately, quietly." That's rich," I muttered. "You've spent your whole life telling me to stay quiet." Denise's eyes welled again. "She's your sister." I didn't answer. Because yes, Lana was my sister. The same sister who'd mocked me in front of friends who posted her wedding photos online with family means everything while I wasn't even invited. The same sister who thought climbing higher meant stepping on everyone else. "I never meant for this to happen," Lana said suddenly, voice cracking. I made mistakes. But you didn't have to ruin everything." She looked small, curled up in the corner of the couch, hair slightly undone. Her mascara had smudged from crying, or maybe she wanted it to look that way. "You don't get it, do you?" Ron leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You always had this chip on your shoulder. You were the quiet one, the distant one. But Lana, she brought people together. She made things happen." I turned toward him, expression calm. "Is that what you think leadership is?" He didn't reply. Denise sniffled. I reached into my bag. The sound of paper sliding free was louder than anything else in the room. I held up the cream envelope, the Addington crest embossed in gold. No one moved. "This came yesterday," I said. "It's from Tessa Moreland." I broke the seal slowly, deliberately. Slid out the document. Let the silence hold. Haley leaned forward slightly to read. "Claire Whitmore is hereby appointed to the Regional Advisory Council on Professional Ethics and Standards, effective immediately." Lana blinked rapidly. Denise froze mid-sob. Ron's jaw tightened. "It's a temporary seat," I added flatly. 6-month term. "But it comes with voting authority on finalist certifications, background review protocols, and hiring policy reforms." I folded the letter neatly and placed it on the coffee table. Nobody said a word. I stood, adjusted my bag, and turned toward the door. My hand paused briefly on the frame, just long enough to say what needed to be said and nothing more. "You once said I'd never amount to anything. Looks like nothing just got a seat at the table." It didn't begin when they mocked me. It began when I stopped needing to answer. Monday morning arrived quietly, the way most turning points do. The sun crept across the hardwood floor of my apartment, catching the edge of a sealed envelope on my desk. Pale ivory, crisp edges, unassuming, but inside a culmination. I opened it slowly, even though I already knew what it said. "We trust your judgment. Your silence has been your strength." I exhaled through my nose, steady and deliberate. For once, my breath didn't catch. It wasn't just an appointment to Addington's Ethics Council. It was recognition. Not for being loud or visible or self-congratulatory, but for being the one who chose not to need approval in order to do what was right. A ping interrupted my thoughts. "Haley, you should post about it. Don't be afraid to let them see your success." I stared at the screen, unsure. It wasn't shame. I felt more a residue of years being told that speaking up was attention-seeking, that my wins didn't count unless someone else stamped them first. But maybe, just maybe, it was time. I opened LinkedIn. My fingers hesitated, then moved. For years, I believed invisibility meant safety, that staying quiet meant staying protected. But sometimes what people call invisible is just someone who no longer needs validation. I wrote about the subtle cuts that accumulate when you're told you're not quite enough. About being passed over, sidelined, minimized. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The truth was there between the lines for those who knew how to read it. I hit post. Graham responded within minutes, 3 clapping hands. Haley followed with, "I'm proud I used to study beside you." Then came the unexpected, an email from Lana. "I understand now, but it's too late, isn't it? No excuses, no manipulations, just that." I didn't reply. Silence can be cold or cruel, but this wasn't that kind of silence. This was a full stop, a closing door. I poured myself coffee, savoring the calm. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. The weight wasn't gone, but it was no longer on my shoulders. Then another email. Subject line, "You've inspired us. Would you consider speaking at the Women in Integrity Summit?" The table was set. But this time, I wasn't there to beg for a seat. I arrived precisely on time, 6:30 p.m., not early, not late. Just enough to assert that I came by choice, not obligation. The restaurant was one of those upscale Southern fusion spots Ron liked to recommend to his clients when he wanted to impress without seeming too obvious. Dark wood floors, candlelight flickering in low glass bowls, linen napkins folded like origami. The kind of place you pretended was comfortable while calculating how much was appropriate to tip a sommelier. I spotted them at the corner table, Ron in a navy blazer too crisp for June, Denise fussing with her scarf, Lana staring at her wine glass like it might whisper a lifeline, and Haley's surprised guest already seated, legs crossed, phone tucked away like she actually wanted to be here. She saw me first and offered a small, genuine smile. I returned it. She was the only one I could meet in the eye without needing to brace. Claire Ron greeted me, rising halfway as I approached. His voice was clipped, his face unreadable. Denise tried a warmer tone. "You look nice, honey. Have a seat." "Thanks," I said evenly, taking the chair opposite Lana. She didn't look up. Menus arrived. Water poured. Haley asked about the new ethical board appointment with a glint of quiet pride, and I answered modestly. Nothing performative, just facts. No one else mentioned it. The small talk was awkward, trapped between effort and tension. Ron broke first. Your mother and I, he started, voice lower than usual, have been thinking about things. About how maybe we've handled some parts of the past poorly. I didn't answer right away. I watched him fumble through his self-crafted script, each word chosen more for its defensiveness than sincerity. Denise chimed in, her voice almost inaudible. We want this dinner to be a reset. A recentering of family. I took a sip of water. Is this for you or for me? She flinched. Lana finally spoke. If I said I was sorry, truly sorry, would it matter? Her voice cracked on the last word. For once, no performative confidence, no coy tilts of the head, just a woman in crisis. I met her gaze. To you, maybe. To me, it doesn't undo anything. But I hear you. A beat passed. No one moved. Somewhere behind us, a waiter dropped a tray. The sound snapped everyone slightly out of their daze. We began eating slowly. Ron tried to steer the conversation toward mutual memories, trips to Lake Junaluska, piano recitals, holidays long past, but it all felt like reaching for warm stones buried in snow. I listened, but I didn't engage. Eventually, as the plates were being cleared, Ron leaned in. Your sister almost had everything, Claire. Everything. Couldn't you have helped her finish that journey? I let that hang in the air. The words weren't a question. They were an accusation laced with regret. Denise added softly, You're her sister. She needed you. I placed my napkin carefully beside my plate. There was a time, I said slowly, when I needed her too. I needed all of you. When I asked to take those Saturday finance classes, you said no, because Lana had music rehearsals. When I earned that merit scholarship, you refused to sign because Lana was applying too. They looked at me now, not as a black hole of need or silence, but as someone with a record one they hadn't bothered to keep. And still I continued. I didn't retaliate. I didn't tell the ethics board anything that wasn't already in Lana's file. I didn't ruin her opportunity. Her record did. Lana's mascara had started to smudge. She whispered, I thought you'd let me pass. I looked at her not as a victim or villain, but as a woman raised in a house where entitlement was stitched into the curtains. I'm not angry, I said quietly. I'm just done performing grief for people who never offered space for mine. And then I stood. The motion was unhurried, final. Denise looked like she wanted to speak. Ron didn't move. Lana simply watched me. I turned toward Haley. She rose with me. We walked together past the maitre d', past the soft music and laughter from nearby tables, past the part of me that still hoped they'd change. Outside, under the restaurant's wooden awning, she breathed in the warm night air and smiled faintly. They have no idea you just won, do they? I glanced up at the stars barely visible through the glow of street lamps. I don't need them to know. They took my name off invitations. I put it on a foundation. That sentence echoed in my head as I sat alone in my new office, sunlight filtering through the tall windows onto stacks of documents and legal forms. The plaque on the desk wasn't flashy, just simple brass engraved with my name and the title, Founder Grant for Silent Voices. I ran my thumb gently across it. I'd never needed recognition, but it was time to own what I had built. Graham leaned into the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. You ready to sign? I nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. We settled at the small meeting table near the bookshelf where files were neatly laid out. Articles of incorporation, tax documents, nonprofit registration, a proposal for our first scholarship. Haley had highlighted a quote on the cover, Not everyone needs to shout, but everyone deserves to be heard. The logo beside it, a soft silhouette of an ear inside an open hand, was her idea. Gentle but firm, just like the mission. This will prioritize students who've been overlooked, I said, flipping through the mission statement again, even though I'd read it 20 times. Low-profile applicants, students who got passed over because their grades weren't loud enough, or because no one ever sponsored their voice. Graham raised his coffee. To giving them a seat they didn't even know was missing. I raised mine too, the warmth grounding me. This wasn't just a gesture, it was a map for kids like I'd been. Kids who didn't fit the mold, who were told they were nice but forgettable. I had lived in the margins. Now I was funding escape routes. Haley burst through the door with a box of materials. Sorry, traffic was. She stopped mid-sentence, catching sight of the signed logo. You picked it. I smiled. Of course I did. You read my mind with it. She sat across from me, spreading out pamphlet drafts and mock-ups of a potential website. I was thinking we should do our first event right here in Greensboro. Something local personal. Before we scale. I looked at the invitation draft she had printed. The keynote box was still blank. I tilted my head. You want to speak? She asked. No, I said quietly. I want someone who's never spoken in front of anyone to speak. We find them. We lift them up. She grinned. You really are making something new. A ping on my laptop caught my eye. An email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, thank you. I opened it. Hi, Claire. We haven't met. But I was in the finance internship program at Eastern Hall 5 years ago. Lana led our project group. She made sure I got sidelined after I challenged her decisions. I ended up transferring out thinking I was the problem. But I saw your post. And your foundation. Just wanted you to know I run my own division now. And I support what you're building. Thank you for reminding people like me that silence doesn't mean surrender. I sat back stunned for a moment. It was a reminder I hadn't expected and needed. This wasn't about my sister anymore. This wasn't about my family's silence. It was about those like me too quiet to be remembered, too strong to stay erased. Should we add a panel about ethical leadership? Haley asked, tapping her pen against the schedule draft. Yes, and include stories of failure too, not just success. We moved through logistics, laughing at small glitches and unexpected email chains. At some point, Graham slipped out to another meeting, leaving just Haley and me. When I reached for the final form, the formal registration of the foundation, I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out the old fountain pen. The one I had begged my father to let me use when I was 16, hoping to sign my first college application. He'd refused, saying I hadn't earned it yet. I clicked the pen open. The ink still flowed smooth and dark. Signing my name, I felt the quiet click of a past unlatched. No anger, no grudge, just release. I had waited long enough. Haley looked over my shoulder. It's official. I leaned back, the weight of the pen oddly grounding in my hand. Then half joking, she added, Should we send Lana an invite? Just so she knows where your name ended up? I chuckled, capping the pen. If you think it matters to her, go ahead. But I'm not doing this to be seen by people who never looked. She nodded slowly. You're not trying to win anymore. No, I said finally. I already did. I was never invisible. Just ignored. The microphone didn't tremble in my hand the way I thought it might. The spotlight burned bright, but it didn't sear. Rows of faces filled the auditorium, hundreds of them, many with eyes already locked on me, not with skepticism or dismissal, but with quiet anticipation. My name glowed in subtle gold on the screen behind me. Claire Whitmore, member Addington Council of Ethics. But the words I had brought today had nothing to do with job titles. I scanned the crowd and saw Haley in the front row giving me a small nod. Tessa Moreland sat nearby, arms folded, expectant calm. I took a breath. I come from a family where noise equals achievement. I began where the one who shouts the loudest is the one who gets heard. I wasn't loud. I didn't want to be. A few in the audience nodded. Others leaned forward, curious. I wasn't the golden child. I wasn't the troublemaker. I was the one who did her work quietly, waited her turn, and got told she had none. My younger sister played violin, debated, was voted most likely to lead. I was voted nothing. A small ripple of laughter, recognition, maybe. But that's not a sob story. That's just background noise. I paused, letting the silence swell. What matters is what happened when I stopped asking for space at the table and built one of my own. I walked the audience through it, not every detail, not the blow-by-blow of every slight, but the shape of it. The BBQ where I was spoken over, the job offer that required my signature, the silence I held and what it protected. The family who had called me useless and the system I had come to stand for. I didn't name names, I didn't need to. My moment didn't come from shouting, I said. It came from refusing to be erased. Applause started not explosive but honest. Hands met palms with a rhythm that grew stronger with each row. I exhaled. When it faded, a voice from the audience rose, a woman, maybe in her 40s, standing with a conference badge swinging from her neck. "Do you forgive them?" she asked. It wasn't accusatory, just genuine. And it hit harder than anything I'd prepared for. I glanced at the podium, at the subtle reflection of myself in its lacquered surface. "I forgave myself first," I said. It was the truest thing I could offer. I stepped away from the mic to a standing ovation. Haley was clapping, tears in her eyes. Tessa stood too slowly with a quiet kind of approval. It wasn't the kind of noise my family would have made for a flashy success, but it was louder than anything they'd ever offered me. Later, as the auditorium filtered into mingling circles and congratulatory handshakes, I drifted to the side, needing a moment. A girl not more than 20 approached, clutching a notebook to her chest. Her voice was hesitant. "I just wanted to say, I was the useless one in my family, too. I thought something was wrong with me. But hearing you today..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I nodded. "You don't have to prove your worth by shouting. Just stand long enough for the truth to find its shape." We stood in that soft space together, and I realized something. I wasn't speaking for revenge anymore. I wasn't even speaking for validation. I was speaking so someone else might find the voice they buried to keep the peace. This summit, this stage, it wasn't the finish line. It was the beginning. 2-2. All those years they thought I needed their name. Turns out mine was enough. The light spilled through the tall windows of the new office, sun-dappled, gentle, warm, in a way that made everything feel intentional. Even the silence. Especially the silence. I sat at the polished desk, fingers resting on a thick stack of papers. The final registration documents for the Eleanor Whitman Foundation, grant for silent voices. A name that bore more than legacy. It bore proof. There were other names listed: legal advisors, compliance consultants, even the state treasurer's certification. But the line at the bottom, the one marked founder and chair, waited only for mine. Across from me, a young assistant barely out of college flipped through a checklist on her tablet. She was efficient, bright-eyed, unaware of the decades it had taken to reach this moment. "Do you need a cosigner?" she asked, looking up. "No," I replied with a quiet certainty that didn't need to be louder. My signature would stand on its own. Outside the office door, Haley knocked once and stepped in without waiting. "They're arriving," she said with a smile. "The students." I nodded. "Let them settle in the conference room. I'll join them soon." Before standing, I turned to one final letter on my desk. A note I'd written the night before in pen. Not on email. Not in a draft folder. Just ink on paper. It wasn't addressed to anyone living. "Dear Grandma, you told me once it's not about who sees you. It's about what you build when no one does. This is for all the voices like mine that stayed quiet too long, not because they had nothing to say, but because no one listened. Thank you for teaching me that silence isn't weakness, it's choice." I folded it and placed it inside the drawer next to her brooch and the fountain pen I now used. The documents were waiting. I lifted the pen, black ink, steady grip. My hand didn't tremble. There was no voice in the back of my mind asking if I was enough. There was no fear that someone else's approval would give this signature weight. There was only me and my name. Claire Eleanor Whitman. The letters curved neatly onto the line, each stroke deliberate. I didn't pause. I didn't look up for applause. There wasn't any. And that was fine. That's the thing about signatures, I thought. They don't define you, but sometimes they declare you. Haley stepped forward, watching me gently. "You know, she said they'll remember your name, not because anyone told them to, but because it means something now." I smiled, standing and collecting the signed documents. The foundation was no longer an idea, it was real. Students were waiting to share their stories, to ask questions, to step into a space built for those who had once been silent. We walked together toward the conference room. No banners, no press. Just people who'd never had a seat at the table, now being handed a chair with their names on it. And I finally had mine. She didn't raise her voice, but she rewrote the rules. What began as exclusion ended as transformation, not just for herself, but for every silent voice watching from the margins. Justice didn't arrive in shouts or vengeance, but through unshakable clarity earned with every withheld signature and every moment of grace. Like a final chord in a forgotten song,